Well, good evening, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host this evening. My name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night, we chatted about the UFO Invasion, the staged event that our master had planned for us, and how Project Bluebeam, which by today's military standards is very old, very proven technology, how they would use this holographic projector to project into the skies above major American cities solid-looking, very real-looking motherships, alien motherships, and how this would terrify us into giving the U.S. government, the U.S. corporations, well, the international corporations, the British government, the Committee of 300, the elite, the Olympians, total control of our country. They're using, as you might have noticed this last decade or so, they're using the United States as the bully of the world, the thug nation we've become. And as the world's biggest thugs, we'll get our own, we'll get our comeuppance, and then the British or some other member nation of the world will come to the world's rescue against the evil Americans. And that's what we are today. We're so stupid. We frankly don't deserve any better. But luckily, so far as the staged UFO invasion is concerned, I guess we just have not frightened our masters enough for them to try to use it on us. Or, of course, if Dick Chaney had gotten his way, he would have just dropped a nuclear bomb on an American city in order to keep little King George V in power in his fake presidency. Today, I thought we might chat about another very old story, this one written actually by one of the masters, a fellow by the name of H.G. Wells. You know, it's having grown up on the periphery of all of this and not realizing it, having grown up with ex-military, current military intelligence, CIA operatives, the mafia, the Vatican, the Jesuits, all of which are basically the same guys. It still amazes me, the masters, their servants, the Mandarin class, and then the servants of the servants. I'm not even sure what to call them. The bootlickers, I suppose. They own everything, the masters. They own everything, including us. And yet with all their power, all their wealth, all their control, they still want to be loved by us. You know, and it's an amazingly abusive relationship that we and our masters have. They hate us. They despise us. They fear us. They murder us. They torture us. And yet they want our love, our admiration, and our worship. You know, of all the odd things that I see every day, and, you know, sadly, I see way too many odd things, this is probably the strangest. Our masters want us to love them, even as they're standing on our faces with their steel-toed boots. Anyway, Mr. Wells wrote a little story called The Time Machine way back in 1898. Of course, in his time, all of those things existed, as the masters have access not only to our technology, but to the technology of all the civilizations that came before us. Again, ask the Vatican about their library, the real one. Because, you see, if the human race has been on Earth for at least 2.5 billion years so far, I'm frankly guessing, and from what I have seen, I know for a fact, the masters have technology that would leave Star Trek way, way behind. You have to understand one thing about our masters. They actually tell us everything that they are about to do. They actually give us a chance to stand up against them and say, no. I don't know, it's black magic and deals with the devil. The devil always tells you in writing what she's going to do to you. And you always have the option to walk away. You always have the option to say no. So why don't we ever say no? Our masters, the enemy, I suppose. I don't want to call anybody the enemy, but I'm hard-pressed. I'm running out of words. Our masters, they always publish in a mainstream newspaper, more than one, exactly what they're going to do to us in advance. True, it's usually on page 3 of the New York Times, and true, it's only about, 3 column inches in length, if that long, but it's there for anyone to read. A few years ago, they published Our Masters in the New York Times, page 3, 1-inch column that if you'd been reading it, you would have paid attention, where they told you flat out that FEMA, in the event of an emergency, would not be there to help you. They would not provide food, water, clothing, shelter, anything. You were on your own. At the same time, Congress passed a bill that said anyone found guilty of hoarding, planning for your own survival, having your own food stored, your own water stored, your own weapons stored, in the case of an emergency, because FEMA's not going to help you, you'd be convicted of hoarding, you'd go to federal prison. That was also missed somehow. It is a fact, if you attend a university in the United States, one of their universities, and of course in the U.S. there are only their universities, controlled by the masters, you're always given a tour of the campus, and you are always shown where all the libraries are, and you are always invited to go in, make yourself at home, and read the books, especially the law books, which I highly recommend. Reading a law dictionary just for fun, you will be amazed at how many uses there are for the word is. I think 27. And in every law library book I've ever read, Black's Valentines, look up the definition of human being. In law dictionaries, human beings are described as monsters. So you're given the opportunity to learn what the masters are doing, but no one ever does. So, when Mr. Wells, more than 100 years ago, one of the masters, wrote about time machines, I'd bet money they had one. I know they have one now, but we'll say that for another day. It's funny, the time machine they have now, it actually has been working against them. I know it sounds silly, and I do apologize. I don't know any other way of saying this. They have a time machine. They've gone into the future, and they've mapped the course of the future, and they've made deals with people in the future. And to make a deal with someone in the future, that means that you are constrained to certain events in the present. If someone is really annoying you and really bothering you, you have to check with the future to see if you get rid of them, what will happen. And so the masters, by making these temporal agreements, have actually tied their own hands. Which is why I'm guessing, and this is only a guess, a hunch. I have no proof of this whatsoever. I think that's why they're now simply retreating to their underground cities. And anyone who speaks up against them, they leave alone because they cannot take the chance of breaking that temporal agreement, because to change the present, they would change the future in a way that would actually, well, basically tear them to pieces. Again, it's a hunch I have, it's a feeling I have, but I have no proof. Anyway, Mr. Wells wrote about his trip to the far future. And in that future, the human race had divided itself as it has today. You had, for example, the Eloi, the cattle. The happy, calm, beautiful, tranquil people who lived on the surface of the earth in the ruins of great cities. Wars and more wars and more wars, and it's what we do because our masters control us. So you had the Eloi living on the surface, peaceful cattle, beautiful, peaceful cattle. And then you had the Morlocks, our masters, who lived in vast underground cities with horrifying technology, but they themselves had de-evolved into man-apes. I would say man-eating monsters, but since they don't consider us their equals, I guess we'll just call them, monsters. My problem with Mr. Wells' story, this sounds like today to me, or even yesterday. We have the Eloi, the cattle, us, and we have the Morlocks, our masters, barely human from our point of view if we knew the truth and were willing to accept it. It's a very good story, but it comes down to some basic things. The world ends, changes. The masters go into their deep underground cities, are trapped there by the event 2012. They, quite naturally enough, turn on each other. They are trapped in their underground cities because their technology is not all they think it is. And they become primitive, mindless savages that control, again, horrifying weapons. And they manage to come to the surface of the earth and herd the Eloi, us, and then they eat us, which they eat human babies all the time. And I know that's an absolutely ludicrous statement to make, but it's unfortunately true. So the Eloi, the cattle, us, we remained on the surface for the event and became simple and childlike. You know, again, this sounds like yesterday to me. This sounds like the 98%. This brings up all kinds of questions. The first question is always why, the question the masters hate. Why, if the masters know from one of their own that this is their fate, to go into their deep underground cities, which exist today, tens of thousands of feet below the surface of the earth, inside of the crust itself. And all these vast cities, and there's hundreds of them in the United States alone, they're all connected by the supersonic sub-shuttle network of tunnels that run under even the deepest ocean. So all of these underground cities are connected. And they're already filled with a specially raised crop of human cattle as their personal legions of slaves. If they know that they're going to de-evolve and become, well, even more monstrous than they are, why would they continue down the path that they've chosen? I mean, in the end, they just become Morlocks. It's probably because they already are, frankly. Maybe they don't see it as de-evolution. Maybe they consider devolving into man-apes, carnivores, eating human beings. They might think that's the next stage of their evolution. I have no idea. Or the alternative is they may just be at this point so damn stupid. Remember that the 98% formula applies to our masters as well as to us. Maybe they just cannot see any other road to take. Me? I'm going with the Eloi. And that thinking isn't so bad. But you know, sometimes it would be really nice to have someone to think with. But as you know, we have a plan for surviving and prospering and growing healthy babies after the event. And as always, the question is, do you? If not, you might want to consider coming with us. If you've got the money, we have the knowledge. Let's get together, let's talk about it. The other night I mentioned that 3.5 million US dollars would be enough to make 50 people comfortable against the future. That means basic supplies, a place to live, safety, locking the door, and taking all those supplies and building a village, a small civilization. For US $35 million, we could have other people build it for us and have creature comforts immediately, and be able to find truly the best craftsmen, the best tradespeople, the best of the best people to be with us. Again, it's your choice. If you happen to have US $35 million lying around and you care about yourself and your family and making healthy babies, you know, let us know. We know how. We know where. And we actually have the question as to why. So, for all of us here at the 2012fad.com, this is, as always, Charlie Bluehawk, wishing you a really good day and reminding you, please, no matter what, keep that good thought. Good night.